I'm Randy Van Wagner, president of Mohawk Valley Community College, and I'm here with Dr. Jim Gifford, who was a full-time professor of theater at the college from 1972 to 2011, was a Chancellor's Award winner, a co-founder of the theater program, was extremely involved in the cultural series and student clubs and organizations and many things at the college during his time here. So, Jim, thanks so much for joining me and helping MVCC celebrate our 75th anniversary.
Sure thing. It's a wonderful thing. It's also a little daunting because, as I said to you earlier, the college and I were born the same year. So as I watch the college get older, there's a wonderful thing at watching the progression of all the new buildings that have risen up in my time. And I'm the one who has the chips and pieces, taken out of me, but the college looks stronger than ever.
So
So
we're celebrating your 75th anniversary as well.
I
So
am.
very,
I'll be 75 in June. Yeah. So
oh my. Well,
it's
take me back to 1972 and how did you first come to work at the college?
I came to the college almost by accident because my father had died in 1971, and I wanted to come back. I was in New York City. I was at Columbia in graduate school, and I wanted to be closer to home. So I saw that they had an opening in the English department, which is what we were then, and I came up and I was interviewed. I had a very interesting interview. I came up with a beautiful new suit, but I forgot my shoes. So I was wearing white tennis sneakers during the whole interview. And I still remember going around the third floor of Payne Hall, dressed to the nines, except for my feet. Everybody noticed me. And I'm convinced to this day that one of the reasons I was hired was because I was a face they couldn't forget. But I came and I had the intention in coming to MV, to be honest, that I'd only be here for a year or two to see how things played out with my mom. And I thought, well, I want to finish my PhD, and I had all these plans. Well, I have to tell you that when I came here, the school bent over backwards to be nice to me. They gave me everything I wanted for class. If I said that I needed a movie for this and everything, and back in those days, you paid a lot of money to rent films, $100, $200, they'd say, yes, of course. I started teaching the film course, and they would just get me whatever I needed, a new projector, state of the art. When I needed to show CinemaScope movies, they got me a lens that would show things, in widescreen. And as I taught more and more there, at MV, I became comfortable because they were always supportive of me. I was lucky to have very good department heads who would back me up. And I found that one year led to another, and I can't say that it's inertia, but I found myself liking the college. And this may be a hard thing to say at this particular point. I think I had a prejudice against community colleges when I first started here. As I said, I was at Columbia, and I don't know what kind of career I envisioned for myself. So I thought of this as a stepping stone. Now we have reached an age, haven't we, where the first lady of the land is a teacher in a community college. And I think there's a wonderful acknowledgement there of the greatness of what community colleges do. And it took me a while, I would say 4 or 5 years, and I began to really relish the students that I found, who were always, I had very good students. I had others who needed more help. But I find that that's the way in any 4-year college. So I found myself liking the community college experience. And MVCC was a very up and coming school. I mentioned the building, the new buildings that were on campus. And bit by bit, the campus just kind of exploded until we had dorms. Back in the day, I think we were one of the few community colleges that actually had dorms. And that was a big draw that brought people from a lot of different places. And I think it made MV a little more cosmopolitan than we might have been otherwise. We went through an expansion through the years where we were very strong with international students as well. But I found myself liking the place. I got very involved with theater at the beginning, and back for years and years, it was the drama club. And it's funny that even going back to 1972, the club has always called itself the drama club. They've never changed it to anything. It's part of the MV's history that actually goes way far back. And I like directing plays back at the very beginning. When the modern version of Drama Club came to be, I was fortunate to be involved with that and directing plays. And back in the day, we had underneath where all the administration sits now, the third floor of Payne Hall, the main theater was down on the first floor. And it was originally not meant to be a theater. It was meant to be a huge lecture hall. And so with those limitations, because it wasn't a very deep stage, Drama Club nonetheless made it its home. And we put on just wonderful plays there. I mean, wonderful memories. I remember doing Tartuffe with Jerry Goodman, who has passed away. He was in the department, very good actor. And we built a set where it was 2 stories high. And he had to make his entrance holding a prayer book in front of him. He played the title character. He's a religious hypocrite in this play. He came in the door and he was a story up and he missed his footing. God love him. And he came down on his rump, the whole flight of stairs down to the stage floor. He picked himself up. He was kind of a big man. He picked himself up fine, picked up his prayer book, and he continued right along. He made some quip or other. And I thought to myself, this is one of the reasons I like theater. You've got to think on your feet. I got involved in other clubs too. I'm very proud to say that I was the first advisor to the Gay Alliance at MVCC. And that was back, gosh, I think in the early 90s when, and I still remember a student coming up to me and saying, I understand you're gay. Would you be willing to do this? And I said, you know, I'm not really out publicly. This was the 1990s. And he said, well, you talk a good one in class and everything. He says, isn't it time you put your money where your mouth is? And I said, you're right. And we started the Gay Alliance, which was a very edgy thing back then. And now it's changed. You know, the club still exists, but it's changed what it's doing. And it has, what I like about it is, you know, there are a lot of different names for people who have different gender qualities. And they've expanded along with that. And they include people who are gay, lesbian friendly. And I notice how this has continued and they become a formative, organization on campus, which I'm very proud of. They do a lavender graduation now, I think several years old. And, to think that I've been around MV long enough to see it grow. I think it was a more conservative school, as most schools were back then, to watch that change. I did my best to bring MV, I think, some kind of renown, although I'm not sure that it's the most classy. I directed a version of the play Titanic. And because I thought it would be a good idea at the time, we put it on. I spoke to the gym teachers and we put it on at the pool at MVCC. And that was one of the stranger experiences I've ever had. 6 people in the cast, half of them were faculty members, half of them were students, and they all ended up in the pool at one time or another. And we had a big rowboat because I believe they taught life saving there for years. And they had a big rowboat they brought in. So of course that was a good set. And we put the play on and the local channel thought that was the funniest thing. They came and interviewed me. And we could only allow about 100 people into the pool. And it was dead of winter when we put this on. So they'd be freezing with their winter coats. They'd come in very hot and humid, and they take off their clothes. The audience was as much fun to watch because they'd be stripping down as our actors would too, and dive into the pool. So I became a little notorious for that one. I was proud of that one and thought maybe I should do another play in the pool, at the same time. I love doing drama club. And I think of another happy memory. All the years that I have tried to do classic plays that, would please the English department so they'd send their students and so on. One year I couldn't think of anything else, and this was only a few years ago. I got hold of a script of Night of the Living Dead, and I did my first zombie play. And I was really ashamed to tell colleagues, what I was doing. But I had the kids all dressed up as zombies wandering around Payne Hall that you see behind, or not Payne Hall, pardon me, the Schaefer Theater behind me. And they would go in and among the audience and everything. Well, I directed that play, and I have never in my life had a sellout with stand up people in the background, standing room to watch this play. And I thought to myself, I've really probably missed a good part of what theater is all about, because theater, entertains. Anyway, that was one of the things. I'm looking at the picture behind me. Another happy memory at school was that my partner Paul and I were married on the stage.
Oh my goodness, what a great story.
I remember at the time thinking, where will we do this? Because churches back in 20, this was 20, was it 9? 09 or 11. And right around the time I was retiring, but before I had retired, right around the time, I thought, I've been teaching my kids in theater for years. I tell them that graduation, that weddings, that sports games are all theater. And we spend time talking about this. And I said, getting married is theater. Something went off in my head, and I asked the administration if I could be married here, and they had no problem with it at all. I said, we're glad to rent it out. No, you're, professor, full professor, blah, blah. So on a Sunday, we were married in September on the stage, and we had lots of friends and everything. I still have been teaching, even in retirement, teaching theater classes. And there isn't a time I don't get on that stage to yammer away to students, and I look down and think, I was married here. And I always like telling them about it too, and they, sort of gasp and everything, that sort of thing.
And you were part of, you were very involved in what the conversations that went into the design and construction of that theater, were you not?
I was, and I will say Dr. Michael Schaefer, the president before you, had the idea of building a new theater because we needed one. And, I'm sure he had other ideas for it too, but he was very good at coming to see all the faculty who would be involved with the theater. And he made it a point not to just talk to administrators about how we might use it to open up a cultural series or that. He wanted to make sure that it was a teaching space. And I think that was something that helped him rationalize it to whatever powers in Albany that had to be appeased. And he made sure that anytime there was any detail about the theater, that we all got to weigh in. And he'd say, would this work for you? Is this going to work? He made us feel very important as part, large decision makers, though I'm sure in the end our part was very small. But I will say that he paid attention to us down to the last details, so that the theater we have at MV is quite beautiful and accommodates, very classy and modern technological productions. And we had not seen anything like that. So I was very flattered to be asked to have my input, give my input, and then to see that a lot of it was paid attention to.
Yeah.
So I love the theater. Yeah.
So for someone who came to the college thinking it might be a good year or so, year or two of service, family and all, and then to then 39 years later find yourself retiring and then tack on another 10 of adjunct teaching and still very much involved in the life of the college. What made you stay all those years?
I always liked the people I worked with. My colleagues were wonderful, and each year, when you had to do a self-assessment, for any advancement or anything like that, they would always pay attention to collegiality, and that would figure in. And I never had the least bit of trouble. I was one of the ones, and Sandy Engel, who was my department head for years, would laugh at me. And I said, I actually liked the meetings because I liked the people I worked with. We paid attention to each other. We listened to each other. We had our gripes occasionally, but more often than not, we had, ways to congratulate each other. And I'd walk across campus. I knew people who worked in maintenance. I knew the people who worked in food service. I knew everybody, and I always like to think that I would not only treat them the same, but I think they all treated me with that kind of respect that I loved. And I think that was a large part of it. And then, of course, I can't say too much about the students I got. I got really fine students. And one of the great parts of being a teacher is that you go on and there's always a space to keep going with teaching them something. But what's the line from The King and I? By your pupils, you'll be taught, I think the teacher in that says. And very true. It was always a learning process for me because the students that I taught always gave back. And I enjoyed that give and take. There was a time in me, and don't feel offended with this. I remember way back when they said, Jim, are you interested in doing administration at all? Because they would approach various people at various points. And I just said, to tell you the truth, I love the classroom. I always have. And I feel I make a great deal of difference one way or another. I hope I do in the class. And I said, I just could not give that up. So I think my colleagues and the students themselves, and then the beauty of the campus, it's a beautiful campus. Out of all the SUNY schools, very few of them have kept, how do I say this, a unified look to the way the buildings all mesh with each other. There is a feeling of completeness on the campus. Very, very beautiful. And I've just grown to really love the place. Even on days I don't teach or have anything to do. And in the summers, as I was saying to you earlier, I come up and walk around the track or I walk around campus. So I'm probably, in years to come, I'll be, the blue light in the middle of the night, that students will report on in years ahead, the ghost of the campus. And I'm not the only one to do this. A dear colleague of mine, Jim Dyer, taught until he was quite sick and could barely move. And he grew to love this campus. And I have to say that I follow him closely in that regard. I still love the school.
Well, Jim, thank you so much for helping MVCC celebrate our 75th anniversary, and happy 75th anniversary to you as well.
Thank you. Big cakes for both of us this year.
There you go. Very good.
Thank you, Randy, for thinking of me.